Thank you. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this meeting of the Planning Committee. I'm Councillor John Walsh. I'm Chairman of the Planning Committee for this municipal year. Vice Chairman Councillor Ayub is online along with members of the committee. We are supported by various officers, planning officers, Alex Allen, Helen Williams and Monica Dubracker, representative of the council's, the Borough Solicitor's Office, Nicola Raby, and Susan Daly and Ian Mulholland from the council's committee administration. The agenda for this afternoon is as published. Item 1, declarations of interest. Any members' declaration of interest? Nothing in the chat box. I therefore take it that we have none.
No.
Item 2 is urgent business.
Not received any, Chair.
Nothing's been brought to my attention. Thank you. Item 3, apologies for absence.
Yes, Chair. We haven't actually got any apologies for absence today, but I believe that Councillor Sherrington and Councillor Wilkinson will aim to join the meeting soon.
Thank you very much.
Sue, I am here.
Oh, she's here. Hi, Elaine.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome. We come then to item 4, minutes of the previous meeting. These have been circulated.
Moved them, Chair.
The correct record.
Moved.
Thank you. Unless I see any dissent in the chat box, I'll take it that they are approved. Thank you very much. We come then to item 5, the planning applications, report of the Director of Place. And the eagle-eyed members will have spotted that the index for those applications was in fact incorrect. It was the meeting we held 2 weeks ago. We have the 2 applications this afternoon: land at Victoria Road, Horwich, and land at Collins Woodway, West Bolton. Order. Can I just double check, please, that we have online 3 ward councillors, Councillor Sylvester.
I am here, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Councillor McKeon.
Yes, Chair, I'm here.
And Councillor Brady.
Yes, Chair, I'm here.
Thank you. And on behalf of the objectors, Malcolm Harrison.
Yes, I'm here.
Thank you. Mr. Harrison, are you speaking alone? Because I've got 2 other names alongside as potential substitutes.
The other names are there as substitutes in case we have technical difficulties.
Right. Okay, we'll come to you shortly in that case. And I know we have John England and John Coxon on behalf of the applicants. Is that correct?
Yes, Chair.
Thank you.
Yes, Chair.
Before we take the application, I want to put something on record, two points on record. One, an email which was circulated with some erroneous information from an objector suggesting that the application could be determined by the officers and myself. As members of the Planning Committee know, but for the benefit of the members of the public, no application could be considered in that manner. It could have been a delegated decision had there been no objections, but that would not have involved myself as chairman. The second point I want to raise is I've had mention made of an email from the applicants earlier this week, which included a large number of email responses in support of their application. That email came from the applicants and they were entitled to submit that before members, and members will have seen those emails. The process for the application will be that I'll invite shortly Helen Williams, the planning officer, to present the report which has been circulated to members. I will then invite the 3 ward councillors, Sir Sylvester, McKeon and Brady in the order in which they registered, to speak for up to 5 minutes. So following that, Mr. Harrison, you will be able to speak on behalf of the objectors for up to 3 minutes, and I will then invite members of the committee with any questions to pose questions to you. I will then call Mr. England, speaking on behalf of the applicants. And again, you will have 3 minutes, Mr. England, after which, again, members of the committee will be able to ask questions. Members will then be able to ask questions of officers before the matter is open for debate. So could I invite Helen Williams, please, to present to the report on behalf of officers.
Thank you, Chair. This application follows 2 previous outline refusals for residential developments on the golf course. The 2017 application for up to 300 houses was refused by committee and then dismissed at appeal. The appeal was only dismissed for landscape reasons. The 2019 application for up to 276 houses was refused by committee solely on the same landscape grounds. Within the appeal decision for the 2017 application, the inspector considered that the north and south fields of the appeal site appeared as an integral part of the surrounding landscape and found that the proposed residential development of the south field and the northern section of the upper fairway would be harmful to the character and appearance of the area. The inspector, however, suggested that residential developments could be accommodated to the southwest of a notional Mayfair to Buckingham Avenue dividing line without undue harm to the area's character and appearance. The submission of the 2019 application sought to address the appeal decision by excluding the south field and the northern half of the upper fairway from the development site and concentrating all development to the southwest of the inspector's notional dividing line. Members, however, considered that the inclusion of a vehicle access and its associated highway paraphernalia within the north field, linking the development to Mayfair, would harm the area's character and appearance. The applicant now proposes up to 150 dwellings, and these would be accommodated wholly within the southern part of the golf course. Both the north and south fields are now outside the red edge of the application site, and the whole of the upper fairway and the eastern part of the golf course, also known as the southern slope, are proposed as ecological and recreational open space. Only one vehicle access is now proposed off Victoria Road. The secondary accesses previously proposed of Bond Close and Mayfair are no longer included. The council's landscape officers believe that the visual impacts of the development would now be very significantly reduced and that the landform and existing tree cover would screen views of the development from the surrounding landscape. The applicant is proposing to put a covenant on the 6.37 hectares of proposed open green space to ensure there would be no future developments on that part of the site and that it would remain accessible to the local community to use. The proposed Section 106 agreement would also ensure the future management and maintenance of this land. Officers therefore consider that the sole reason for previously refusing development of the golf course site has been fully addressed within this latest proposal. The highways works proposed for the Beehive roundabout as part of the Rivington Chase development and to be undertaken by the council would, again, not only be sufficient to accommodate the additional traffic associated with the development, but would also have network performance benefits in terms of improving capacity at that location. The applicant has agreed to contribute £274,000 as part of their Section 106 to cover a possible funding gap for the works should the Rivington Chase development not meet the necessary quantum of development to trigger improvements at that time. The applicant is also proposing the full required Section 106 contributions, which includes a third of the houses to be affordable and contributions towards secondary education. The council continues not to be able to demonstrate a 5-year housing land supply, and therefore the proposal's conflict with other protective open land policies can only carry limited weight in the planning balance. Officers considered that the associated benefits of the proposed development significantly outweigh the limited harm the development would have. Members are therefore recommended to delegate this decision to the Director to secure the provisions of the Section 106 agreement. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Helen. Could I therefore invite Councillor Sylvester, please? Councillor Sylvester, as you know, you've got 5 minutes to address the committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the Planning Committee. I have objected to this planning application in my capacity as a ward councillor for Horwich North East, in which the area of this planning application is within. The area of Horwich Golf Course, which makes up the area of this planning application, has been submitted by Bolton Council as part of its Greater Manchester Spatial Framework document to become Greenbelt land. Bolton Council wishes all of Horwich Golf Course to become Greenbelt land as part of its submission, which was supported by all political parties on the council and indeed by full council who agreed the submission. The proposals in this planning application are therefore directly contrary to the wishes of Bolton Council and its spatial framework submission. I believe this application is contrary to policy CG6AP and parts 4 and 6 of policy OA1 of Bolton's core strategy. Furthermore, I believe the proposals would cause substantial visual harm to the landscape. I believe the proposals also conflict with parts 2 and 7 of Bolton's core strategy policy CG3 and with parts 9 and 11 of policy OA1. I believe the proposals would harm the character and appearance of the area and the openness of this protected open space land. Bolton Council, in its submission to the Greater Manchester Spatial Framework document for Horwich Golf Course to become Greenbelt land, concluded it is necessary to keep this land open to conserve the character of Horwich as a town with a setting of rising open land, especially in light of the proposed development of urban land within the built-up area of the town. I believe that Bolton Council has a duty to uphold its previous conclusions in its submission to the Greater Manchester Spatial Framework and should therefore refuse this application. And as a ward councillor, I therefore ask members of the Planning Committee to refuse this application this afternoon. I pay credit to the Stocks Residents Association, who have worked tirelessly campaigning against 3 planning applications, and to all of the residents who have objected in the fight to protect Horwich Golf Course against development. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Sylvester. Councillor McKeown.
Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, I hope to be brief because I know you're all well acquainted with the arguments around this application, not least because this is the 3rd application to come before the committee in recent years. You have a detailed officer's report and you have also an excellent presentation from the Stocks Residents Association. The 2 previous applications were refused and went to appeal. And as you know, the 2nd appeal has yet to be heard. You have a difficult decision to make because the officer's recommendation is to approve. And to go against the recommendation requires that you can provide a material objection in planning terms. And I want to argue that when seeking for a material issue, you should consider the centrality in planning law of the local plan. At the heart of any consideration of this application is the fact that the council's local plan places the Horwich Golf Course in a designation of other protected open space, and this is significant. Policy CG6AP makes that absolutely clear. The designation establishes the democratic will of the council that this piece of land should remain undeveloped, and this strong policy position was reinforced when the council unanimously agreed to include it in its submission to the Greater Manchester Spatial Framework, as Councillor Sylvester has described. So the golf course under that submission is designated as Green Belt. In the officer report, the argument of the tilted balance and the 5-year housing supply is used to suggest that development policies are out of date. However, in a court case between Gladman Developments and Corby and Uttlesford Borough Councils, Mr. Justice Holgate decided that paragraph 11D, brackets 2, in the National Policy Framework did not require development plan provisions to be excluded from consideration, and that decision makers may take them into account when conducting the tilted balance exercise. He said that whether or not policies are in fact out of date would remain to be assessed by the decision maker. And in this case, your committee is the decision maker. Mr. Justice Holgate also commented inter alia that looking at a housing shortfall could find that it is, for example, short term. In the case of this application, I would argue that among many other factors to be considered, the COVID pandemic has slowed housing development, but also that recent planning decisions, such as the recent approval of the Morris Home site on the Horwich Local Works, will contribute to the 5-year supply. There is also significant planned development in Bolton Town Centre, and you are all very well aware that numbers of permissions that you have granted are not yet built out. So the planning policies that Councillor Sylvester mentioned are not out of date, according to the judicial decision that I have referred to. So I think that the committee has sufficient reason to reject this application. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McKeon. Councillor Brady.
Thank you, Chair. Right, good afternoon, members. I'm not going to repeat what's been said today and by the 430 letters of objection and the very relevant comments made by Councillor Sylvester and McKeon, but members may want to consider or even ask, does planning stop at the site boundary? With the link road for the local works delayed and now not expected to be open until March 2023 at the earliest, should the fact that traffic from this development, the one next door on the college fields, from the 112 almost completed on the local works and the 393 approved just 2 weeks ago by this committee, will all be using Chorley New Road, passing 2 primary schools and 1 secondary school. Why the 5-year supply of 5-year housing supply of 4.5 years in January, now quoted as 3.7 years in March, has not been updated 6 months later. We were promised that this would be updated frequently, and as Councillor McKeon says, COVID has made a big difference, but it's plain to any resident in Horwich that the Bellway site is going up at quite a rate of knots, as is occupancy. Horwich North East and Horwich and Blackrod have more houses completed and under construction than any other ward in the borough. Is it appropriate or realistic to expect an area already meeting every demand placed on it be expected to take even more that is not sustainable? There may be some improvements in this latest application, but they do not address a lack of infrastructure to support the town and residents of Horwich, the effects of climate change, no reference to Clean Air Act consultation, or even EV charging for cars. As said before, and I'm not going to repeat much, but this is the 3rd time this development has been proposed. The first was rejected by the planning committee, not held by the planning inspector. The second was rejected by the planning committee. An appeal was lodged with the planning inspector. Has it not been withdrawn, and yet we have a 3rd application? What is the status of that appeal? Thanks very much, Chair, and thank you, members.
Thank you, Councillor Brady. Would I now invite Malcolm Harrison, please, to speak on behalf of the objectors? Mr. Harrison, you have 3 minutes to speak, and I would then ask you just to hold the line in case of a question from members.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Harrison.
This application has a feeling of Groundhog Day. It is supported by the officers like the previous 2 applications have been. They were refused by this committee and refused once by the inspector. The applicant will not take no for an answer. They return again, apparently supported by the officers. But it is up to the members to decide on this application. We acknowledge that this 3rd application has addressed a number of faults of the previous 2, but it does not overcome the main fact that the development is unnecessary and it will result in the loss of open green space. Housing need in Horwich is already being exceeded. Due regard has not been given in the officer report to the evidence-based Horwich housing need assessment carried out by ACOM. That shows up to 47 properties a year could be required. Currently, the supply in Horwich is over 2,200. Approved development provides over 20 years supply for Horwich and 24% of Bolton's 5-year supply. The low core works development will bring a population the size of Blackrod to Horwich. In spite of the difficulties of contacting many residents due to COVID-19 restrictions, over 435 people voiced their objection. A further 100 objections came via an online poll. There have been 11 letters of support, including golf club members who will financially benefit, and a further 30 random comments have appeared in the last 48 hours, which cannot be viewed as convincing support for this scheme. The numbers speak for themselves. Public recognition of the inappropriateness of this development is widespread and strong. It is accepted that the tilted balance of the MPFF does apply here, but this does not mean the council policies are out of date. The application needs the committee's own assessment. If members consider that the development would do more harm than good, they can lawfully reject it. In terms of benefit, the application should be given less weight than the previous ones due to less houses being built. Given the size of the shortfall of the borough, 150 houses will be a small contribution, and it is simply not worth sacrificing forever the valuable open green space. The vast majority of these houses will not be affordable homes to rent or for first-time buyers. Traffic congestion is a certainty at the Beehive roundabout. There is no guarantee of if and when any improvements would start and how they would be paid for. Flooding will certainly be an issue, as the current chair of planning, Dr. Walsh, highlighted it when a member of the committee assessing the first application in 2018. He drew on his knowledge of the Reebok Stadium development and the need for underground storage tanks. The allocation of over £2 million to the problem now, some of it in relation to this site, makes our point well. Ultimately, the harm caused by the development would outweigh any benefits arising, and members are respectfully requested to reject the application on that basis. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
I have no questions for you. Thank you very much, Mr. Harrison. Stand down, please. Could I invite now John England, please, speak on behalf of the applicants?
Thank you, Chair and members of the committee. Northstone has taken a completely different approach to this site. We've applied a fresh set of eyes. Our starting point was to understand the valuable responses from the local communities to the previous applications, the important comments from this committee and the points made by the inspector at the previous appeal. And we've listened. The Northstone scheme has been significantly reduced from the previous proposal, with half the number of new homes now proposed. Residential development is now restricted just to the and not to the upper fairways and fields. This area of development aligns fully with the notional line the Stocks Residents Association offered previous inquiry as their view of a limit of development. Vehicle accesses have been reduced to just one. Accesses to Bond Close and Mayfair are no longer proposed. Over 60% of the site is now devoted to important green space, which will link the communities of Horwich with nature, provide for health and well-being, education opportunities and charitable opportunities. That is the equivalent of 8 football pitches. It provides significant new biodiversity habitats as well as improvements to Nellie's Clough. It will provide significant levels of public access to what is currently private land, and it will be protected from future residential development through a covenant under the Section 106 agreement. Not only does the Northstone scheme offer all of this, it also meets Bolton's policy contributions in full, including secondary education. A third of the scheme will be provided as affordable homes, and £250,000 contribution will be made to provide highway improvements at the Beehive roundabout. Our consultation has been full and wide-ranging, sympathetic to the current restrictions, and has included direct engagement with the Stocks Residents Association. It is clear from the level of response that these changes have resonated with the community. Historic objection has been dramatically reduced, and there's now significant support for Northstone proposals. Northstone's approach is to build thriving, cohesive communities with safe pedestrian-led landscaped environments, high quality design, and low running costs. We presented our first scheme, Silcash, in West Horton to this committee 18 months ago. You supported us in the face of significant objection there. With 26 sales in just over 2 months, and every visitor to that site being blown away by the quality of the scheme, this committee and your council has been proved correct. Northstone wants to continue to invest in Bolton. It is a great place to live and work, and we would ask that the committee give us the same vote of confidence here in Horwich. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Mr. England. I have no questions indicated, so thank you very much. But I do have 2 questions to officers. Councillor Hayes, please.
Thank you, Chair. My question is around paragraph 33 of the report and the paragraphs around it about the housing supply. It says that the target for Bolton is 776 homes a year. When was that calculated? And I'd like the officer's comments on whether the recent white paper, whether it becomes law or not, would actually change the formula for calculation of what Bolton's target is. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Allen, you taking that?
Mute. Well, I don't know. I can bear with me. So in terms of the, I mean, I don't have the specific detail. If I can just have a look at the report, if you just bear with me on the first point. In terms of the white paper, yes, it will have potentially ramifications for housing requirements, but obviously obviously the consultation period ended, I think it was November for that. So obviously that isn't there aren't any concrete proposals in terms of the level of future requirements. So obviously we have any decision making by the committee and by officers should obviously be on the current methodology and the current figure.
Chair, can I just come back on the first point, possibly to help Mr.
Yeah.
I understand that the figures are actually based on 2014 estimates. I may be wrong, but that's what I think was the case. I'm hoping that can be confirmed.
Okay, so paragraph 33, housing target is based on local housing net figure developed using the MHCLG methodology, required to deliver 776 houses. I mean, to be honest, I don't have the background document where that comes from, but obviously that is, as stated in the report, that is the current figure and the current methodology. So really that is what members need to base the basis of the housing requirement in Bolton upon. I'm afraid I can't give any further advice, I'm afraid. I'm obviously happy to provide a detail in future or by email, but obviously I can't do that at this stage.
Thank you. Councillor Hayes, you want to come back on that?
Not at the moment. I may refer to it in the debate, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Peel.
You're muted, Councillor Peel.
Thanks, Chair. As part of his submission, Councillor McKeon quite correctly pointed to the judgment, I think, a few months ago concerning Corby. I think it was Mr. Justice Holgate, if I wrote the name down correctly. Clearly, that judgment has bearings on cases such as this, or on applications such as this. So my question is to officers, to the relevant officer, what consideration is being given to that judgment when that judicial decision, when making balanced decisions on the recommendations to committee? Thanks, Chair.
Thank you.
Chair, maybe if I could answer that one.
Thank you, Mrs. Raven.
The situation is as outlined in the officer's report, and that's, let me just find the paragraph numbers. I think Miss Williams has summarised it at the end of her report, and that's what members need to consider. The information given in the report is correct.
Thank you. Councillor Peel, do you want to come back?
No, thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Wilkinson, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Just a couple of questions. Unfortunately, the applicants didn't type fast enough. Just a question to officers and a comment on what my question would have been to the applicant. In relation to the town centre developments in Bolton Town Centre, and particularly the Crompton Place development, which is now delayed by another year, what will be the impact of that delay on our figures and any impact it will have on other applications for other sites? And just in relation to the wonderful comments from the applicant, how marvellous they are, there are one or two things in West Orton which I would have loved to have just asked him one or two things about, to knock on the head this wonderful, shining, marvellous site they've got in West Orton. Thank you, Chairman.
Mr. Allen, can you develop your previous comments about land supply, housing land supply? I suspect not at this point.
I mean, it's correct, Councillor. I mean, obviously, I know our Assistant Director Paul Whittingham gave a briefing for members on the housing land supply, probably prior to the Roscoe's Farm development, which Councillor Wilkinson refers to. So I think obviously we could do a further briefing note in terms of housing land supply, and perhaps picking up on Councillor Hayes's point about the with planning policy colleagues in terms of the calculations for housing figures going forward. Obviously, the purpose of the meeting today is obviously to make a determination on the current application based on the current figures. Obviously, we're quite happy as a section, as a team, to provide a briefing to members outside planning committee on planning, the land supply position and any of the impacts of COVID or delays in, as I say, Councillor Wilkinson says about the town centre development. So we can do that going forward, but I don't think today is the right arena to do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Allen. Thank you. Councillor Darvesh, please.
Thank you, Chair. Very simple question, really. Paragraph 136, where the applicant says that they will not proceed with the current appeal. Would you say now that is now a material planning consideration? Thank you.
Is that one for Mrs. Raby or Ms. Williams?
I can briefly answer that. I don't know if Nicola would like to come in after me. I would say it would be a consideration, but it's dependent on committee members how much weight they actually give that, and obviously members should be assessing the application on its merits rather than potential whether or not there's going to be an appeal on the other application. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Darvish, are you happy with that response? And want to come back?
Yeah, no, that's fine. That's fine, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Finally, question in that case, repeat. Right.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to go back to this land supply again. Can the officers tell me what the current 5-year supply is? Because the 3.7 was in March 2020. Of course, there's been a lot more development since then. Thank you.
I suspect, Mr. Allen, we don't have that information to hand. Your previous comments, previous responses, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. I mean, obviously, if we had more up-to-date figures, we would have put those in within the report. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. The matter is now open for debate. Councillor Wright.
Thank you, Chair. The previous applications were from Peel, and they've come back with this third one has come back as a nice green, people-friendly application, but it's still by Peel again. It's just under a different name. It's I'm concerned with all this with all these promises they're giving on the 106 money, and they're not going to build any more houses on this green land at the top of the golf course, which obviously paid a lot of money for. It's just a matter of trust, and I'm concerned that we're going to see what happened with Morris Homes on Horwich local works, where they're just going to come back afterwards, say they can't afford any 106 money. There's not going to be any social housing, and extra houses going to be built. It's just a matter of trust, and I'm very dubious of what I've heard today. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Howarth.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you very much, Chair. This land is in the rural fringes area in Horwich. It literally kisses the green belt. The land's character is rural fringe, and it is right next to agricultural land. This land is other protected open land. It's not just greenfield land, it's protected open land. Other protected open land in our policies is listed as countryside, so this is Horwich countryside. It's not yet in the green belt, but the council wants this land in the green belt, and we heard from others on this already. So for now, this land is protected land, and this land is protected open countryside land. And why is it protected? Well, that is to keep it as natural countryside for people to enjoy, rather than changing the land completely, which it would be. If houses get built on this land, it's completely changed. It's protected open land in character, and it also has important landscape setting, not just up at the rural edge, but also it is set next to the Walsuches conservation area. This is contrary to Bolton Council policies, contrary to OA1 of Bolton Core Strategy, contrary to policies CG3, and the land should remain protected. This application for homes building is contrary to Bolton's allocation plan policy, CG6AP, as it is inappropriate development of other protected open land. This application for homes building is also contrary to Bolton policies OA 1.4 and OA 1.6 and the Council's strategic objective number 15 of Bolton's core strategy. In addition, this application for 150 homes building is up against paragraph 97 of the National Planning Policy Framework England, as it is both open space and it is sports designated land. Horwich does need both open land and it needs sports land, and this application still is up against that paragraph 97 of the NPPF. These matters must not be dismissed today. So to repeat, we've got policies OA 1.4, OA 1.6, OA 1 in its entirety, Objective 15 of Bolton Council Core Strategy, up against paragraph 97 of the NPPF, CG3 of Bolton's planning policies, and across this we've got character and appearance, landscape and open land. I spoke on these policies in the debate on the application when it was 02/434/17, which the Planning Inspectorate, in matters of character, appearance, landscape and open land, the Planning Inspectorate continues to show an interest in, if that's a phrase on this. So I summarise that policy can tilt the balance in favour of policies when you look at the tilted balance that kicks in. And the policies, a good number of them there, are in favour of the protection of protecting other protected open land. Therefore, because it's not occurred yet, I'm sure on the meeting, I was trying to pay attention, I need to propose refusal on this planning application today. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Howard. Councillor Peel.
Thank you, Chair. I agree largely with what Councillor Howard has just said. I'm not going to detail as she just outlined, but I have three principal issues with this application. The first one is the one that is seemingly taking back seat in the analysis of this, and that is the fact that this is under our existing designation, is designated other protected open land. That does afford this site some protection. That was a decision of the council many years ago. It's in our local plan. It's not included in housing allocation sites, and so when applications come in for such sites, they are speculative in their nature, and the reason that officers feel that they must come out and recommend approval is because of concerns about the 5-year housing supply. Now, we've heard questions and no real explanation as to why, as to how our particular figures reaching the point that they are reaching. There is implications from the COVID pandemic on house building, and more pragmatic approaches should be made by both planning authorities and inspectors when looking at the 5-year supply. We also heard from Councillor McKeon about the judgment of Justice Holgate, which I will do some research on after this, but I've just had a quick look as fast as I could in the time available, and there are clearly some interesting things being said there about the nature of tilted balance and what decision makers, in this case the planning committee, can and cannot take into consideration. Certainly in his judgment, backing up the local council is indicating that we can put differing amounts of weight in terms of coming to our judgment. So that's the first one. The second issue, it does concern me whenever we have an application such as this, that we're debating this, but in the shadow of the background we have an outstanding appeal. Now, this application is for 150 dwellings, and I agree with the applicant, it is infinitely better than the previous application in that it's a significant reduction of units by 126, but the fact remains there is an outstanding appeal for 276 houses which hasn't been withdrawn. Should committee approve this today, I believe that would add significant weight to the outstanding appeal, and we can't instruct the applicant to withdraw that appeal, even though they've said they're willing to do it. A decision for approval today would put significant weight on that outstanding appeal. And the third reason, and I do, we've mentioned this before, but the issue of the emerging policy, the issue of the GMSF. It is at, it's dragging on painfully slow, but it is at a developed stage. And Councillor Sylvester's absolutely right. It is the wishes of this council. When it was last debated in full council, it was unanimous. I know it's no longer unanimous, but it was the wishes of this council that our 5-year housing supply could adequately be provided, in addition to having a net increase of green belts, and this particular land was part of that submission. I think more weight should be put on emerging policy that's at an advanced stage. I think it's in general it's quite short term. It's quite a short term approach not to put significant weight on that, because you end up just considering applications such as this as a snapshot in time, what the current situation is today rather than what it will be in several months from now or a year from now. The situation can radically change. So for all those reasons, Chairman, I cannot with conscience vote for an application that goes dead against the wishes of this council in terms of its submission to the Greater Manchester Spatial Framework, which protects this piece of land even more so than its current protection. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Peel. I think Mrs. Raby wants to come in with some legal advice.
Yes, Chair, it was about the, there are two issues. There's a 106 agreement proposed, which is gone into some detailing in the report, which is the usual commuted sums and the provision of the recreational area, the green area at the top. The applicants have also provided a unilateral undertaking which promises to withdraw the current appeal should planning permission be granted today. So it was just Councillor Peel's comment about the if planning permission was granted today, then that would go against the current appeal. But the applicants have promised to withdraw the appeal should permission be granted today.
Thank you, Mr. Raby. Councillor Peel, I think we're to come back at that point.
Thanks, Chair. I'm aware of what the applicants promised. So I suppose my question to our legal officer is, in terms of how is that enforceable? Does that actually become if this application was approved, does that become a condition of this application? Is that undertaken or that promise actually legally binding?
Yes, it is. Yes. In the same way as a 106 agreement is legally binding, then yes, the unilateral, it's just a different form of Section 106 of planning obligation, but it's just made on behalf of one party. But yes, it is legally binding.
Thank you. Can I then invite Councillor Hayes?
Yes, thank you, Chair. One or two points to make. The reduction in houses is certainly an improvement, but it's also said that reducing the access points from 3 to 1 is a benefit. That actually isn't to the road network, because at least under the previous scheme, there was a possibility of traffic escaping from the area, if that's the right word, up Stocks Park and onto Chorley Old Road. Now all the traffic from this development will actually come onto Victoria Road, and that will increase the pressure on that road and the junctions onto Chorley New Road. So in some extent it's an improvement. In others, actually does emphasise the highway problems. I'm also wondering whether the reduction to one access is really acceptable to the fire and ambulance services. They normally expect at least a second alternative access I'm not proposing we should impose one, because I think the accesses that were proposed via Bolton Close, for example, was not a satisfactory one. But it does actually act against the viability of this approval. We talked about the 5-year supply. Now, I understand this was calculated in 2014. Since then, the world has changed, let's be honest. The demand for houses has been very much affected by COVID. I suspect it will also be affected by Brexit. And we know the white paper was going to change the way that the supply was calculated. I think that the amount that we're talking about now is a very unlikely event to be needed in Bolton. I know that the officers say that's what we have to take into account, but it would surely be wrong for us to take a decision that we think is the wrong decision because we're worried that it will be appealed against an out-of-date housing need for the borough. Now, Mrs. Williams made a very valid comment earlier. We should take a decision based on the merits of this application. We shouldn't take a decision based on the fact that we think any decision we might take would be overturned based on a 5-year housing supply, which is to me an invalid supply. So, Chair, I think on that basis, I will certainly vote against this application because I think it's inappropriate for Bolton and for Horwich. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hayes. Councillor Sherrington.
Thank you, Chair. Protected open land to me says it's protected and it's open and it's going to remain as land. And I would have thought that our forefathers in the Horwich area who represented Horwich at that time, which I think it was the early 70s when they started looking at Stotts Park, well, the farm there to make, put the houses up, probably thought that that's what it meant and that it would be protected and that it wouldn't have houses on it. And by the fact of it being a golf course, I mean, golf courses can go on greenbelt. It is all right for golf courses to be on greenbelt without planning permission, it would seem. So, but it doesn't mean that just because you become a golf course, it gives you the rights to throw all the protection for that land in the bin that the forefathers had actually fought for. And I'm sorry, I just feel it doesn't matter what kind of houses they're putting on here. It doesn't actually do anything for the people who live not just around that area, but also in the whole of Bolton, because what COVID has shown us more than anything else is the fact that we all need some open space. And we've got people who live in Horwich and live in Bolton who don't actually own any piece of land that they can call a garden or anything outside their property. And places like open space are very, very much the thing that they've appreciated during the COVID situation. And I do think that wherever we can, things that are called protected open land, we should be doing just that. We should be protecting it. So I will be voting for refusal on this particular application. Thank you.
Councillor Darvesh, please.
Thank you, Chair. I remember this application because I chaired it. I remember the site visit as well. So whilst reading the application, I'm going through individual paragraphs and I'm saying to myself, okay, this looks okay, so far so good. Then I had this question in my mind which I was going to mention to the applicant. Then I read paragraph 136. Now, I know from experience it's a difficult position for ward councillors to be in, and also the MP. At the end of the day, you're talking over 400 objections to this application. But for me, 0.136 becomes a significant issue. It becomes a material planning consideration. I honestly think if you were going to give the best advice to the residents, then all of a sudden this becomes really, really important. So I want to just quickly mention the previous applications. The first application for 300 houses, the inspector actually said the harm to the landscape was significantly outweighed the benefits of the development. Now, if we go back a few years before that, the first planning application where we had this issue of the 5-year land supply was the one in Blackrod, Hill Lane. And it was for just over 100 houses. Now, by definition, when you stick 100 houses on a piece of land, the landscape, the character changes. Now, the inspector at that time actually felt that the 5-year land supply issue was more important than the impact on the and character of the land on the landscape, and therefore ruled against the council. That is the issue with other protected land, and it's always been an issue. Since then, we had a number of applications we lost at appeal. So this first application, when it came for 300 houses, to be honest with you, I think the residents got a bit lucky. On a different day, a different inspector, he could have actually went against the council. So the second application comes in for 276 houses. Sorry, so the first application, the inspector actually went on a bit too much. Actually, went on to almost help the developer by suggesting, actually, if you did this, and you keep within specific confines, you stay away from the rural side, then you know what? It might just work. So the applicant came back with 276 houses, reduced the amount of space, tried to keep away from the south fields, etc. And it came with a planning application whereby it reduced the number of houses, but kept in line with what the inspector actually said. This was dismissed at committee. I would have voted against it, and it's waiting for an appeal. Now, it's easy for me. I'm an independent councillor, not with strong connections to Horwich North East. So it's easy for me to actually say this, and I totally understand ward councillors and the position they're in. But sometimes I think we really need to take into account the best interest, the best solution for the residents. And I honestly think they need to understand this as well, and take it on the chin that outline application for 150 houses will be a lot better, because the applicant will not be going to appeal. Remember, they retain half the golf course for their own uses, which is very unusual, and there's a legal agreement which protects that. There's a full Section 106 contribution actually applied to the application, which is unusual as well, so everybody benefits there. So I honestly think, in the interest of the residents, I think they should take the deal. I think we should approve this application, and I just feel sometimes and like I said, I'm an independent councillor, it's easy for me to say this, we do sometimes leave the residents a bit short in terms of what we're actually offering them. Here we've got a solution we could actually offer them. So I'm going to move this application for approval based on the officer's recommendation. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Darvish. Councillor Wright, I think you want to speak again. I want to bring Mr. Allen in on some important material detail on housing.
Was there somebody before me who wanted to speak? Is it me?
It's you, Councillor Wright, according to my notes.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's well, it's been a really good debate today. There's been a lot covered on this, and I live in Horwich, so I see this area on a daily basis. The type of housing they're proposing here are not the type that is required in Horwich, and this Northstone/Peel want to create a nice green open space at the top of the development. There is already a nice green open space there. And if you look at some of the old pictures of Horwich, we were completely blessed we were surrounded by countryside. Now, I know that progress should be made, but there's, at this rate, in the next 10 years, there's going to be very little green space left in Horwich. And as the objector pointed out, just development on its own at the local works will increase the size of Horwich by a full town of Blackrod. There'll be over 5,000 new residents. There is a lack of need in Horwich for this. It is overdevelopment, and I don't think anybody's done it yet, but I would like to second Councillor Howard's proposal for refusal on the grounds stated. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wright. I have Councillor Peel down as having seconded refusal.
That's correct, Chair.
Yeah, I do apologise.
Councillor Waters as a final speaker, and I'm going to bring Mr. Allen in about the housing land supply. Councillor Waters, please.
Thank you, Chair, and members of the committee. To say that I'm shocked by what I've just heard is completely unbelievable. I'm an independent councillor as well, but I also understand the need to protect our green, open land. And we are here as a planning committee, yes, but don't let us not forget that we are also here as elected representatives of the people of the boroughs that elected us to represent them and what they need for and understand for their own towns. I completely understand that there is a clause that says that there will not be another appeal. But how many times have developers promised something and not delivered? I've lost count. I couldn't even count on everybody's hands that are present at the meeting today, because we do not always get what we have been promised, and that happens time and time and time again. And it is the people of this town that we represent that are the people that end up with eggs on their faces, and this is not acceptable. I mean, I was there when this land came up before. I've been out visiting there. It is shameful. It is shameful. And do you know, when there is no green land left and green space left, where are they going to build? Where are they going to build? So I will be perfectly happy to recommend refusal. Well, I know refusal has been put forward, but that is my thoughts on it. Thank you.
Mrs. Darvish wants to come back there. Alan, at this point, please, to comment on the housing land supply information that he has before him.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to clarify something. What I'm trying to say is we have never come across a situation where we've got a choice, okay? If this application came in today for 150 houses without any history whatsoever on this type of land, open protected, I would be against it. But with all the history and the experience, and there's many planning committee members with more experience than me, and then we've got to think about what's best for the residents. That is the reason why I say they should take the deal. It's not because I am openly saying, you know, they should be building on this piece of land. All I'm saying is we've got an opportunity here, that's all. So I am actually looking at the best interests of the residents. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Darvish. Your point is well made. Mr. Allen, please, you could comment now on the policy position.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Yeah, just following on from members' questions, I know in the officer's report it does reference April 2019 as the base date. That has been updated. There will be a monitoring report going out probably in the new year from our policy colleagues with an updated position as of April 2020, because the housing land position is updated once every year, base month of April. So the latest position as is as referenced within the chat, so that is position as at April 2020 is that Bolton has a 3.7 years worth of housing land supply. So obviously in terms of the guidance in and the National Planning Policy Framework, certainly the other protected open land policy is out of date. So I would guide members in terms of potential reasons for refusal when voting on that, in terms of the original comments from Councillor Howarth, which were to do with the landscape and character of the area, rather than I suppose a statistical analysis of the 5-year land supply. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Allen. I'm going to take the vote shortly, but I must remind members, and required to remind members, that where members are minded to vote against the professional advice of our officers, both highways, planning, and indeed other officers, in the report before us, members must be prepared to come forward with reasons which the individual members, are then prepared to support should the matter go to appeal. We've heard very clearly that the legal position of withdrawal of the current appeal is inherent in the conditions implicit in the officer's recommendations. For that reason, it is necessary that members who have moved refusal, and that is the only proposition which has been moved and seconded, members who move refusal must be prepared to represent the authority should this matter go to appeal. That was a very clear advice we were given at the training session for members a few weeks ago. It has been proposed and seconded that the application should be refused. That is the determination which is in front of us. Therefore, members are going to vote for refusal or against refusal.
Yes, Chair. Do you want me to take the vote now?
Can we take the vote, please, Mrs. Bailey?
Yes, Chair. This is voting for, against, or abstain for refusal. Councillor Ayub.
For.
Councillor Connor.
For.
Councillor Darvish.
Against refusal.
Councillor Dean. Councillor Dean.
For.
Councillor Howarth.
For.
Councillor Hayes.
For refusal, and I believe that the road should be reintroduced as a reason.
Councillor Hornby.
For.
Councillor Mistry.
For.
Councillor Morgan.
For.
Councillor Peel.
For.
Councillor Radcliffe.
For.
Councillor Sanders.
For.
Councillor Sherrington.
For.
Councillor Walsh.
Against.
Councillor Waters.
For.
Councillor Wilkinson.
For.
Councillor Wright.
For.
That application is refused, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Peel, before we come to discuss the grounds for refusal, I think you want to speak. Councillor Peel.
Thanks. Just in response to the question posed by yourself, I mean, Councillor Hayes has put something in the chat, and if we refer back to his previous submission, he does wish to reintroduce highways reasons, which I think is relevant. I wanted to just underline that the main point I made was that the tilted balance doesn't put enough weight on the emerging GMSF policy, and also take the opportunity to ask through yourself, Chair, why we have to wait every 12 months for the housing figures to be updated. The last figures are from April 2020, which says 3.7 years. I don't know what it is now in December 2020. It could be significantly different from that. That is also quite a relevant factor.
Thank you, Councillor Peel. I think we had reference from officers at the training session we had a few weeks ago, but the housing land supply was still way below the 5-year supply at that point. But clearly, we will consider the timing of housing land supply figures. Mr. Allen, please, and then Councillor Wilkinson, and I'm going to bring this to a close. Mr. Allen, please.
Okay, thanks, Chair. Just to be clear on a couple of matters that members have raised in terms of highways. I think, as guided by officers at the members' training event, highways is a technical matter, and it is a fact, as outlined in the report, that there is actual improvement to the surrounding highway network in terms of the improvements that would be funded. So really, officers' advice would be that we wouldn't be able to substantiate any highways reason for refusal based on our highways engineer's comments. Just in terms of the tilted balance, I think just going back to Councillor Peel's point, the matter of the weight to be given to the GMSF, whilst it isn't at an advanced stage of consultation or approval, notwithstanding what Councillor Peel has said, it has limited weight as outlined in the report. So, I mean, obviously I have given my guidance to members a short while ago in terms of Councillor Howard's recommended reasons for refusal, other than the housing numbers. It is clear that the tilted balance is engaged, and members, well, I would recommend members go in accordance with the paragraph 11 of the 11D of the MPPF, which states that the issues that they have to provide. So I'll just quote from the MPPF: any adverse impacts of granting permission, would so significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits of permission being granted. So I would advise members to concentrate on landscape character reasons rather than any other reasons that officers couldn't substantiate. Thank you.
Can I invite Mr. Manley, please, to comment the officer perspective, please, at this point?
Yeah, just to reinforce what Alex has said, I think it's important that when we are looking at this, the legal judgment just recently is actually something that's also been the judge's judgment has been around for a while. So in other decisions, which is saying it's a planning balance, and it is entirely for members to make that decision. Now, if members are minded to refuse the application, then again, as Mr. Allen has actually stated, where we don't have an evidential base to support a reason for refusal, that does actually give us a problem at appeal if the decision is overturned. And that could be one where there would be a requirement for an elected member to attend to support that particular reason for refusal. The reason for refusal in terms of landscape is going to be a subjective matter, in terms of you are collectively stating that you believe that the impact upon the landscape is not outweighed by the benefits being brought forward in terms of the housing land supply. And just a very quick clarification on the issue of the GMSF. In addressing that issue, I draw members' attention to paragraphs 46 and 47 of the officer's report, which does actually say that the inspector also considered that the appeal proposal for 300 dwellings was not of such a scale that it was likely to predetermine any other decisions at a sub-regional level, which the GMSF covers. So this is a smaller development than the 300. So what he's basically saying is he doesn't think it's big enough to actually cause problems for the GMSF moving forward. Obviously, this is a member's decision. It is a balanced decision, but obviously we have a fiduciary duty to bring to your attention any areas of concern which, if you are minded to go down a reason for refusal, that if there are problems with those, that we need to draw them to your attention. As Alex said, the landscape issue is one which is a subjective argument, and if you believe that the benefits associated with the development outweigh the harm, don't outweigh the harm, then that would be your balanced opinion. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. A final question from Councillor Wilkinson, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Apologies to the members. Obviously, my shift pattern has not been the best of late for attending planning committee. But I have to say, I may be a bit old school about planning, and I may have missed one or two bits and pieces. But what does worry me when I'm hearing officers and the way they're telling members what to do, how to do it, when to do it, and basically say when we say jump, it's a case of how high you will jump. And I'm a bit worried about who the hell's paying who, because the way things are being said, it sounds like we've an entire department or even an entire council now, which seems to be on the side of the developers and not on the people who are paying their wages, i.e. the public. Thank you.
I think that's a comment on the question, Councillor Wilkinson. We have now taken the vote. We had the officer advice on the way in which we frame the refusal. I suppose that we will now move on to the next item. Next item is land at Collingwood Way, West Horton.
Chair, can I just ask that Mr Harrison and Mr England now can leave the meeting, please?
Sorry, yes, my apologies, gentlemen. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And the three councillors, the three ward councillors.
They can stay if they wish, of course, but cannot take part further. Can I just check, have we got Mr Jefferson?
Yes, we have, Chair. He's just been admitted from the lobby.
Thank you very much. We therefore to application 5937, land at Collingwood Way, West Horton. Mr Jefferson, for your benefit, this will be presented by planning officer. I will then invite you to speak for up to 3 minutes and ask you to take any questions from members before we open the matter up for debate. So could I invite Monica Dubraca to please address this report? It is at page 43 of the bundle, the members of the committee.
Thank you, Chair. The site to which this application relates is a greenfield site to the south of Collingwood Way in West Horton. The site is allocated for housing in Bolton's allocation plan with an identified potential yield up to 43 houses. The proposal forms an integral part of the council's strategy to provide adequate housing land within the borough. The principle of residential development on the site has therefore already been established. The application site is a privately owned land with no current access of Collingwood Way. The site is bounded on all sides by a mix of existing residential development. Pennington Brook runs to the west of the site, and there is a public right-of-way adjoining the site to the east. The current scheme is for erection of 40 dwelling houses, including a mix of semi-detached and terrace properties, for which 14 would be affordable housing. The design, scale and massing of the dwellings is considered appropriate within the surrounding area. The layout of the proposed houses has been amended to address comments from public right-of-way and landscape officers. Some of the plots have been repositioned to lessen the impact on the public right-of-way, and more landscaping has been introduced to the edges of the site along Pennington Brook. The The proposed scheme also complies with the recommended interference distances within SPD General Design Principles, and it is considered that development would not have undue impact on the amenity of neighbouring residents. The site is to be accessed from an existing turning head located on Colleen Way, and pathways will be provided within the site to connect it within public right-of-way and the cemetery site leading to School Street to the south of the site. Bolton Council's highway engineers reviewed the scheme and raised no objection and are satisfied that the proposed development will not have a detrimental impact on highway capacity. They've also confirmed that the proposed access arrangements are acceptable and that the access and the proposed road layout would be acceptable for adoption. In addition, car parking standards are met in full. It is also noted that no objections have been raised from other consultees, and matters such as drainage, archaeology, ecology and contamination will be secured by planning conditions. The applicant is proposing to provide the planning contribution in full. It is therefore considered that the proposed development complies with policy IPC1 of the cost strategy. The application complies with policy, and members are recommended to delegate the decision to the director for section 106 to be completed. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed. Can I invite therefore Jefferson to speak in support of the application? Mr. Jefferson, you've got 3 minutes, as I said earlier.
Mr. Jefferson, are you in the meeting?
Mr. Jefferson?
There is a mobile
Hello.
number that's... Ah, there we go.
Hello, yeah, sorry, I think I was muted.
Right, fine. You have 3 minutes. I'll start the clock again, Mr. Jefferson.
Thank you very much. Hello, my name's Michael Jefferson. I'm the Managing Director of 7 Homes. This application for 40 dwellings accessed via Collingwood Way is a site identified for housing in Bolton's allocations plan. The site is highly sustainable, and despite the allocation being for 43 dwellings, we have reduced the numbers to help create the best possible layout. We are really happy with the recommendation for approval and are grateful for the officers for working with us proactively. Whilst preparing the final scheme, we have replanned the layout a number of times, including improving the relationship with existing residents. For example, the homes proposed on the allotment gardens to the southeast of the site have now been removed, and if planning permission is granted today, we will contact those currently using this land to secure the long-term future of the allotment gardens. We would hope ownership can be passed to them. Also, we have carefully considered the location of surrounding dwellings, and design complies fully with the council's adopted SPG. Land levels have also been checked to ensure a relationship between existing and proposed dwellings are appropriate. The fence to the dangerously enclosed tunnel public right-of-way will be removed and opened up, with homes fronting onto it to create an active frontage, providing important surveillance to the footpath. Where we've been unable to front onto the path within the site, we will install a green screen boundary screen to soften the appearance of a very short section of fencing. Also, we have provided a standoff from Pennington Brook to allow space for enhancements in the landscaping, which will in turn have a positive impact to ecology along the watercourse. The site provides many positives, helping Bolton with 5-year supply, and is fully policy compliant with regard to Section 106 obligations, including education contribution of 142,000, 35% or 14 dwellings for affordable housing, public open space of 56k, and although not required to for a site of 40 homes, we have carried out and submitted a traffic impact assessment which confirms no significant impact. 7 Homes have an excellent track record of delivering high quality housing in a timely manner. We are locally based and directly employ over 700 people. As an example, we were at planning committee in September 2018 after purchasing the former Greyhound track, also in West Horton, from Sparkle Developments. This has been a really successful development and one that 7 Homes are proud of. Feedback from neighbours has been positive, and the site and sales have gone really well, and the final few of 50 homes will be occupied in January, only circa 2 years after that committee. We always seek to employ local contractors. For example, the groundwork on this scheme were from West Horton. We have the same aspiration for Colleen Woodway and will start on site as soon as the pre-commencement conditions have been discharged. I hope that you agree that this is a fully compliant, high quality scheme that is worthy of approval. I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jefferson. Councillor Wilkinson, is your question to Mr. Jefferson or to officers?
Yes, please. Can I thank Mr. Jefferson? I have to say that I did have reservations about the greyhound track, but it has gone reasonably well as new developments go, so it's not too bad. Just a few questions, if I may, in relation to the footpath, and that is where we're talking about the fence, the section which needs to remain, and we're putting a green screen. Are you altering the width of this, moving the fence backwards? Because it is an enclosed space because of the fence which went up some time ago by a previous landowner. And it does create a very tight appearance. I'm glad to hear that you're moving the fence further back in other sections of it, but whether the fence could be moved back to allow a bit more room if you're going to put some green landscaping there. The other question I would like to ask is in relation to Pennington Brook. I would be interested to see and to hear what improvements and quality improvements can be made to Pennington Brook. I did ask some years ago for a nature reserve status to be put on Pennington Brook. Sadly, the council said no at the time. And we've seen some, what I can only describe as slapdash approach from the other developers in the area on the other side of Pennington Brook, which now has a massive concrete water outlet into it and completely spoils Pennington Brook. I hope we don't see something like that to help destroy a bit more of it. Could I ask in relation to the development, if it does get approval by members, but given the previous debate, pretty quite possible. There will be then combined traffic, development traffic by Seddons and Bellways. At the moment on Collingwood Way, there are significant problems, and I'm always a little bit disappointed when I hear highway officers say there's no problems. I actually have to wonder whether they actually went to the site to have a look at it, because I would more strongly disagree with them in a very blunt manner, to be quite honest about it. So I would ask what proposals Seddons would have if they have planning permission today to mediate any traffic problems, to get a grip of their HGVs and contractors, etc., which Bellways most certainly have not done. Thank you, Chairman.
Right. After questions there, Mr. Jefferson, please.
I'll try and remember all those. Thank you. So in relation to the footpath, you can see from the layout that certainly entering the footpath, it is a tunnel, I admit, and a dangerous tunnel. And we've spent a lot of time with the planning officer, with Monica, looking at this area and how best to enhance it as we could. So we've got a number of dwellings now fronting onto it, which will increase surveillance on there. We've probably got about under 15 metres now that is still a fence, some of which borders onto the open space area anyway. And we've enhanced the width with a green space, which will go ultimately into a management company, but reasonably clear from the layout, hopefully. Regarding to the brook, we can only do what's to the brook area, what's within our ownership. And there's a landscaping that will be conditioned on this area, and we've already spoken about enhancements in planting in that area, which I expect to come from that condition. And we'll deal with the ecologists in that area. With regard to highways, always a controversial subject. We're not required to, but we have done a traffic impact assessment, and they say that the scheme's okay. I'll leave that to officers to decide. I can't speak from what has gone on in the past with Bellway. We'll work with the neighbours and try to minimise any disruption that inevitably comes from unfortunately developing in a certain area. The scheme is only 40 houses. I would expect that to take us 18 months to deliver with 30% affordables on there, and with a minimum disruption. And did I miss anything there?
I think you covered most of the points there, Mr. Jefferson. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
I have no other questions. We've come to this debate. Councillor Waters, did you want to speak on this one, or was it the previous?
No, it was on the previous one, but I do want to speak on this one, but when we go into the debate, please.
Well, I have no questions for officers, so I'm going to open the debate. Councillor Waters, therefore.
Thank you, Chair, members of the committee. I actually moved approval on the development that Seddons were talking about on in Hart Common at the old dog track, and I have to say they have done an extremely good job in that area. And it did, Councillor Wilkinson is right, it did come up against some objections in the beginning, but they have, you cannot deny they have done a really, really good job. And they also kept to one of the conditions that I asked for in terms of the road taking it to 30 miles an hour. Whenever we've had an issue with any of the building down there and we've spoken to the relevant people, they've always taken everything that we've said on board. That does give me some comfort in terms of they are good neighbours, and they are local, and they do employ local people. Now that's my niceties done for the time being, and then moving on to the development at Colleen Woodway. You know, we are not unreasonable people as councillors and as part of the planning committee. Sorry, I didn't turn the camera on, I forgot. We're not unreasonable people, and we do look at these pieces of land, and this land does need developing. We do understand it is in the allocations plan, and we get that, we understand that. But what really, really hurts and is very, very difficult to deal with is when we go up against planning applications that are on green open protected land or they are on green belt land, and we raise our objections, we vote for refusal, they get refused, they come back, they appeal, they win. But then pieces of land where it does need developing, it is in the allocations plan, it really does want to make you want to refuse those applications. But on balance, I'm not going to propose refusal on this application. There are some things I do really, really want to talk about. I mean, West Horton has seen an increase in its population. I've been on, looked at the census and various different bits of information. And in a matter of 30 years, the population has increased by 100%. 100%. That is massive. I mean, everywhere it says that West Horton is a hamlet. We're not going to be a hamlet anymore because the development is absolutely massive. Currently, we've got 6 developments going on. Six developments in a small area that is massive. I always have a question with highways. Honestly, and I know I always ask them what planet they're on because they're certainly not on our planet. But how many, please, can somebody from highways please tell me how many more houses do you think can be built in this area before enough is enough? Because it's not fair and it's not just. And there are so many new properties built, and we still have the same amenities. We still have the same doctors, the same schools, and the increase in population is huge. And And I think we really do need some answers. However, I'm not going to refuse this application, because I think we do need to do the right thing when the right thing is put in front of us. And even though it breaks my heart to want to approve a development in West Horton, I cannot refuse something that I think is the right thing to do. And therefore, I am going to recommend approval. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I have no other speakers, at which point Councillor Peel appears. Councillor Peel.
Thanks, Chair. I was intrigued. I was absolutely intrigued isn't the word. Just watching what Councillor Waters was saying there, because I think she spoke quite passionately and adequately summed up, you know, sometimes the feelings of ward councillors when you have these types of serious decisions to make. This application, as she correctly said, is very different from the one we've just discussed. It is housing allocated land. You know, that is the starting point, that this land has been put aside by this council for the purpose of housing, in order to protect the other pieces of land, such as Horwich Golf Course and other pieces of land in West Horton that aren't allocated for land. We can't have it both ways on planning committee. So Councillor Watts is absolutely right when she says that, and she's also equally right that it is frustrating when we do what she termed the right thing by approving applications such as this, but then have to deal with speculative applications on land we haven't allocated, and it is frustrating for planning members, and it is frustrating for us all when we're faced with those situations. And I think she's also, the second part of what she said, where she was talking about traffic and the growth of the population of West Horton. We are living in a time when West Horton is radically changing. You know, it has moved a long way away from being a small hamlet. It's not been that for a long time, and it is becoming more urbanised. And the problems that Councillor Waters describes about traffic and infrastructure are problems that are faced by all urban areas. So those types of issues are long in the experience of councillors like yourself, Chair, in Astley Bridge, or like myself in Tongwald, or any other heavily built urban area. These are the problems of living in urban areas, and West Horton is facing that as well. That's a major discussion point for government and for us all in terms of continued investment in infrastructure, which is far bigger than just local planning policies or Section 106 agreements can ever deal with. This is major infrastructure issues for any urban area. So I completely sympathise with what she said, and I think she moved approval. So I would second approval to this application, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Peel. Councillor
Thank you, Chairman. I have to agree with some of the comments that Councillor Waters has made in relation to the development issues. Councillor Peel's right to a certain extent. West Horton is being turned into a massive urban area. Ward colleagues in Horwich have mentioned how much development they've had. I have to say we've had it probably as much, if not more, for some 30 to 40 years of basically constant, never-ending development. I've lived here all my life, so I actually know where literally every new house has gone and what field it was in before or what farm it was on before. And so to a certain extent, we do have some hypocrisy from people who moved into a farm, into a nice piece of green land, and it's got a new house on it, etc. West Horton is getting now to the stage where it cannot cope. I have to agree with Councillor Waters that highway officers, I'm sorry, you're living in bloody cuckoo land. You really are. I've walked down Church Street today from obviously from the railway station, and I do so every day. And it is horrendous, the traffic problems on there. You have, unfortunately, the phase 1 Bolton's application was approved by government. The inspector took, well, sadly, our highway officer took not a blind bit of notice of previous plan applications on that site, which had actually been refused on highway grounds. We got nothing on phase 1 and Seddons, or maybe a smaller development, adding to that particular problem on Grundy Street, on Woodway, and on Peel Street. Those junctions are now becoming a problem for people getting in and out. What does concern me in the officer's report is the decision that we're not going to put traffic calming in. I'll request traffic calming. Before, this end of the estate was a dead end. People knew the location and travelled in a reasonable manner. Never, to be quite honest, in 20 odd years, actually 30 odd years, being a councillor, I've much in the way of issues from residents about traffic. Since the development's taken place, like I said about Bellways, some of their HGV contractors think they're on Brands Hatch. Unfortunately, they're driving an HGV. Some of the new residents who live on the new development also think they're on Brands Hatch and drive through the existing estate in a totally inappropriate manner. And at some stage, we will probably be pushed even harder by residents to install some form of traffic calming to restrict speed. Unless we ask developers to do these things, it will fall on the highways budget. And everybody who's in this meeting knows full well the highways budget is virtually non-existent. And after this year's cuts of 40 million being taken out of the council's budget, it's going to get a damn sight smaller and more difficult to ensure people stay safe and stay alive. So that's another matter we will have to deal with. And that is one of my real concerns about the continuous drip development. We have other issues. We have phase 2 of Bolton's here, only literally a few yards away. We are awaiting the decision of the Secretary of State. I've no doubt he'll help the friends with Peel, who seem to have great influence in government, with the first phase of the Wingates industrial estate. And I say phase 1. That will bring hundreds of HG vehicles onto Church Street. They'll not go on this fictitious road because the fictitious road doesn't exist yet. And we know full well government kiboshed the east side bypass for West Orton. So they're going to come somewhere. And if we do then get phases 2 and 3 and 4 on Wingates and Foregates, it'll come down Dickinson Lane and then also into Church Street. And if just remind people from Blackburn and Norwich, you'll be the next in the chopping line for Peel as well. It is a difficult one. However, I'm not going to support it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Just for a better record, Councillor Wilkinson, I'm sure it was a slip of the tongue, but you referred to the Wingate site as being Peel, and I understood that to be another developer, but
Chairman, as we've mentioned earlier, and Norwich Council has mentioned earlier, Northstone is a branch of Peel.
Yeah.
Ours is a branch of Peel.
Councillor Wilkinson, thank you very much indeed. We will now move to the vote because it has been proposed and seconded approval, as another speaker has indicated. The members will now vote for or against approval.
Yes, Chair. Councillor Ayub.
For.
Councillor Connor.
For.
Councillor Darvish.
For.
Councillor Dean.
For.
Councillor Howarth.
For.
Councillor Hayes.
Against.
Councillor Hornby.
For.
Councillor Mistry.
For.
Councillor Morgan.
For.
Councillor Peel.
For.
Councillor Radcliffe.
For.
Councillor Sanders.
For.
Councillor Sherrington.
For.
Councillor Walsh.
For.
Councillor Waters.
Yeah.
Councillor Wilkinson.
Against.
Councillor Wright.
Against.
That's approved, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed. That brings the whole of the planning applications. Item 6, therefore, on the agenda are planning appeal decisions, and they are there for record. Members note them. I take silence as acquiescence in that case.
Note them, Chair. Note them, Chair.
Note. Thank you, Councillor Hayes. We come then to item 7, which was the supplementary report circulated on the section 106. Mr. Manley, I think, is going to speak to this one.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you, Chair. The report that I've put in front of members being brought for information purposes, there's been a change in the seal regulations, which requires all authorities in the country which secure Section 106 agreements and also community infrastructure levy to actually put a report onto their website, and it's effectively like a year-end account. The year that we're actually reporting is 2019 to 2020, and effectively what it's basically saying is it's detailing effectively the number of the amount of money rolled through from last year in terms of or the previous year for the Section 106 contributions that we hold as an authority, the number of new Section 106s that we signed during that period, the amount of money that we received during that period, the amount of money we spent during that period, and actually the year-end balance of the 31st of March that's rolled forward into 2021. So it's brought to you for information purposes, and it's just a way of trying to introduce by the government to try and make the process a little bit more clear and transparent for us. We only deal with Section 106 agreements, and what the report is the statement is doing is allowing members of the public to see what monies are coming in, what money's going out, and what money's being moved, rolled into the next year. It does make reference to specific Section 106s, and the purpose of this report isn't really to go into the details of those Section 106s today. It's just basically to say to members, well, this is a legal requirement. We have to have it on the website by the 31st of December. And this is the statement of our actual current position, or the current position as of the 31st of September 2020. What we did do, however, we've been working with the finance team and our planning monitoring officer. We did recognise that as part of this process, there is actually an opportunity for us to take the raw data that we've received, which is required to be put on the website, which is very much in it's in an Excel spreadsheet, so it's quite raw, which is a requirement the government want for us to actually provide it in. But there's an opportunity for us to actually enhance that and actually provide break it down by ward, and also put links in terms of the Section 106s which are identified within it, so that ward members can very readily go onto the website and not just see the government required data, but actually have an augmented and enhanced data set which you can go into. You can look at developments within your ward. You can see what money's come in relation to specific Section 106s, what money's gone out and what it's been spent on. But also you can link into the Section 106 itself and follow that link through to the actual document. So it's going one step further than what the government have actually asked for in providing a much more user-friendly and informative way of providing the information for members and also for members of the public as well. Thank you, Chair.
I've got to say 106 has been one of those things that's been a mystery shrouded in allegory and lost in the mist of time very often. So I welcome the more open approach. It'll be helpful for members, I'm sure. Councillor Darvish, I think, had a question.
Yes, Chair, thank you. I know this report just for noting, but just curiosity. I understand section 106, especially when there's a high-vis requirement, it gets spent on the development, yeah. But just imagine in a debate, I felt the local school required an extension, and I actually put it, I actually say, and the section 106 should go to this specific school for an extension. Am I allowed to do that? Can I put that as a condition in there? And would it stick rather than it going to the central pot?
Yeah. In answering that,
Mr. Manman, please.
In answering that question, what you would do is that if the application came before committee, or if it wasn't triggered and you wanted to make your representations, you do that at the planning application stage. And if there was considered to be a need and quite often there is a local need for education provision, and you'll notice that within some of the section 106 agreements, there's money being put towards additional school places, and actually the document does talk about, it does say within the key headlines that last year we secured 180 places through new section 106 agreements. So you would negotiate that or ask for that as part of the planning process. And obviously, if there was harm associated with the development that needed to be offset by a section 106 contribution, then we would secure that. And if obviously the developer was happy that that was included, and obviously, you know, that's a justified reason, then we would include it within the section 106. But in answer to your question, if we have money comes in relation to highways and it's agreed within the legal agreement, it must be spent on the highways. That's why we have to negotiate it right at the beginning of the process.
Thank you. That's very helpful. Thank you.
Cheers. Thank you.
Councillor Sherrington, this is the report for information, but Councillor Sherrington.
I don't know whether this is the right place or not, Chair, but I'd just like to say, when it comes to education, sometimes it's the places that don't have new build going on, so don't have 106 available, that sometimes are the areas that they need to actually support the schools. So I think it's it should be up to the education department to work out where the monies need to be spent more, where they could get the best out of that money, rather than it going just, in other words, we just heard today, all the development is happening in West Taunton and Horwich, isn't it? If you listen to it. So therefore, they'd have gold plated desks in West Taunton and Horwich if all the money just goes there and doesn't go to the rest of the borough, where unfortunately some places just don't have any room left to put any housing. Okay, thank you. Thanks all.
I think it's fair to say, Councillor Sherrington, that we've never had 106 ring fence to specific areas. It has always been dealt with on a wider basis, but I've got two comments and I'm going to bring this to a close because it's for information. But Councillor Hornby and then Councillor Wilkinson.
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick comment, really, and it's in relation to this section 106. Especially, I just think there could be sometimes more communication with ward members in certain areas with regard to 106 monies, and I think we need to try and tighten up a little bit more with regard to 106 when developers come back and say we can't deliver on that because it's cost us blah blah blah. I just think we need to do a bit of work on that, maybe a PDG in the future to address some of these issues. Thank you.
I think that's a wider issue, Councillor Hornby, but I take your point. Councillor Wilkinson, please, final comment.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I actually welcome this report. It's a useful tool to actually understand where we are. Those of us had development for many, many years, and other members across the borough where there's been 106 money, sometimes it seems to have got lost into the mist of time. Given an earlier comment, I'm beginning to wonder where some of it actually went. I would just have to say, though, that when we do have new development, it does create existing problems. Where there's an area which is already developed and has problems, that comes out of the council's other budgets, our budget, should I say. But when you're in a development area of massive development, such as Norwich and West Orton and etc., we expect developers to start putting a little bit out of their pocket into doing things. And when we're short of school places in West Orton, I expect school places to be sorted in West Orton and not to see 106 education money diverted to another part of the borough suggested by another member. Maybe I should ask where some of our 106 money went in the past.
Thank you, Councillor Wilkins, for your point is taken. Can I thank members your Christmas? And I take the opportunity to wish everyone a pleasant, enjoyable Christmas, a happy Christmas, and we look forward to a prosperous and successful 2021. And I will not incite members by saying Brexit or anything similar. Merry Christmas, a Happy New Year to everyone. Thank you very much for your attendance.
Thank you, Chair.
Merry Christmas, Chair.
Thank you. All the best.
Happy Brexit, John.
Thank you.